So a quick one with Johnny Bairstow going great guns, having just hit his 7th six. England put on 135 inside 15 overs. We were all saying, okay, by when can England finish it? And the general consensus was around 41st or 42nd over. Good thing we got the prediction right. They did finish it in 42.1 overs. Small problem. They lost the game, didn't win it. It's really been a turnaround, folks. It has been an unbelievable finish. 317 for 5 was a good score, but only because India scored 112 in the last 10. In isolation, it still looked as if it could have been below par. The way Bairstow and Roy started, it looked well below par. England should have romped home in this particular chase. At the end, rub your eyes in disbelief. That's what finished. 251 all out. Prasidh Krishna, who was being taken to the cleaners, actually climbed out of the washing machine and got 4 for 54. And he is on debut. Yes, folks, he is on debut. I'm in the company of Michael Vaughan and Joy Bhattacharjya. Michael, it will be disbelief, but which part of it are you going to look at? England's collapse or how India's debutants showed character? A, Krunal Pandya with the bat, Prasidh Krishna with the ball.
Yeah, I mean, India's character, once again, I mean, it's in abundance. Doesn't matter who plays, whoever's making their debut, you just know with this Indian setup, they're going to produce some goods. England should have won that game. Simple as that. When you get the start that Bairstow and Roy gave the team, Johnny Bairstow playing as well as I've seen him for a long, long time. And with that middle order, that England have and the depth of their batting, what do they need? 150 odd, 8 wickets in the tank in 28 overs in the modern era of white ball, 50 over cricket. That really is a stroll in the park. And you can't tell me that the pitch suddenly deteriorated and started to spin and spit and bounce and seam and swing. It was poor thinking. England gifted too many wickets, weren't willing to just hang in there for longer periods. Just hang in there. Hang in there for 5, 6, 7 overs, score 15, 20 runs, don't lose a wicket, and just gradually get yourself back into the contest. If you actually look at the whole tour, I don't know the numbers off my heart, but I know it's not great. But numbers 5 to about 8 in the Test series, in the T20 series, and now starting in the one-day series have been pretty poor for England. It's been that engine room, the middle order, which has been so particularly in white ball cricket, so prominent for England for a long period. Throughout the whole of this Indian tour, England's middle order has just not fired at all.
Yeah, that's one of the things, Joy, during the World Cup, we often mention that India, yes, they did well, reached the semi-finals. But if there's one thing they took out of that World Cup was maybe a little too top-heavy. England, they got lots of substance from that engine room Michael just mentioned. In this T20I and ODI series, the white ball series, it's pretty much been non-existent.
No, absolutely. And that's just funny that because you have informed batsmen. You have an informed batsman like Joss Butler who just moved down there. We didn't think Morgan would bat. We didn't think Billings would bat. Both of them batted. Both of them looked fit enough to bat. They both got out. It's not as if their injuries were, harming them in terms of movement or mobility. So I think they just went to poor shots. And I have to say that the man who gave it away possibly, though that may be a harsh term, is Johnny Bairstow. That Bairstow dismissal at that point in time, I think it was 169 odd. That for me was a turning point. That was where the match turned for me.
Yeah, it was. The Bairstow dismissal was one, but also the faith that Virat Kohli, Michael, had in Prasidh Krishna. 3 overs, none for 37. You wouldn't blame a captain for saying, look, well done, mate. Third man, I'll come back to you. But he didn't. He came to him and said, listen, I want 1 wicket from you. And that's what Prasidh Krishna said after the game. I want 1 wicket. We'll be back in it. He gave him much more than 1.
Yeah, and that's why these kind of bowlers are picked in white ball cricket. They may go for a few runs, but they get wickets. They unsettle the batting unit, bowl a few short balls, bowl with decent pace, gas. Every now and again, they get wickets with poor balls because the batter's kind of beans start to go and you think, I can crash into the boundary on a regular occurrence. Again, a young debutant with great character to bounce back the way that he did today. It shows that he's made of the right stuff. Whatever India are doing behind the scenes, I know we keep mentioning the IPL, but I think Rahul Dravid with his A-side and his development program, he's clearly installing the right mentality into these players because as soon as they go out there, it's very easy to say, the culture must be good. Virat and Ravi Shastri are creating a nice culture, but It's the individuals that are giving themselves the belief to go and perform, because it's only you that can do it. You can only deliver the ball, catch the ball, or strike the ball with the bat in hand. No one else can do that for you. And all these players, they're being brought through your system into the international India team, which is a huge pressure cooker. And they're looking like they're just having a game like the Madan Oval. They just look like they're just playing like they did when they were 10 to 15, enjoying the game. And it certainly isn't just that when you're representing your country with billions watching, but full credit to the system that India have produced. They are getting it absolutely right.
I think it's a good point Michael makes. We talk about the breeding ground of Indian cricket and the ovals in Mumbai, the Maidan in Kolkata, the vast Maidans down in Chennai, and more importantly, Joy, all the open spaces or not so open spaces in our small towns. Those are the keys.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the thing that's biggest. The emergence of small town cricketers. Mumbai has always produced cricketers. So they produce a Gavaskar, they'll produce a Tendulkar at some point. Virat Kohli, Prithvi Shaw will come along, because you're used to it. Mumbai will produce some players, Karnataka will produce some players. But it's the players coming from Ranchi, it's players coming from a place like Uttarakhand. Rishabh Pant comes from Uttarakhand, Roorkee. Small town players who have really come in and are not scared to take it on. And that's what the big thing is, that the exposure. There's an analogy I want to put out here. It's very interesting. At one time, the Indian Institute of Technology is the most prestigious engineering courses in India, Michael. And at one time, they used to be dominated by students from top 6 schools in maybe the top 6 cities in India, because they were the only people who knew how to crack it. What's happened now is that the internet has opened it up completely. So if you're a bright kid, you could be in the middle of nowhere, but the internet allows you those resources. And today, in the same way, somehow, whether it's cricket coaching or the ability to know that, I can go to Delhi and join a club, or to Mumbai and play for somebody, or be picked up by an IPL scout, that's completely opened up Indian cricket. It's allowed access to the small town, which was not there before. And I think that inflow of cricketers from the small town is really it's the adrenaline shot. That's an adrenaline shot for Indian cricket.
Yeah, we'll pick one example, in fact, Joyce, and since you've mentioned all the small towns, Palghar, another little nondescript part of the country, and we've got someone from there who's made an impact not once, but several times with multiple wickets in an over. And we thought we'd try and put things out, construct it for you, Michael, to see what Shardul Thakur, the impact he's had. And it's not just about picking up numbers 9, 10 and Jack. Look at the names. 4th T20I, Stokes and Morgan, with the game going towards England. 5th one, Bairstow and David Malan, number 1 T20I player in the world. 3rd and 4th wicket. And today, it was Morgan and Butler. Yes, by the time maybe Bairstow had gone, but they were still very much in the game. He had laid the platform for them, and again, 2 wickets in 1 over.
Yeah, and once you have that kind of mentality of knowing that you've done it once, you do it again, and then you do it again, and you become that kind of bowler, that kind of player that when the pressure moment's on, the captain will always go, there you go, Mr. Thakur, can you deliver once again? And you just believe that you can, because you've done it once, you've done it twice, you've done it 3 times. It's the same when someone is so good at finishing off an innings with the bat in hand. When the pressure's on, Michael Bevan's going back many years, just knew how to be not out at the end, whatever the situation. And it's the same for bowlers. Shardul Thakur now believes that when it gets tight and his team need a couple of wickets, he believes he can deliver. And that's what he's done on 3 occasions on the trot. England have to find a way, because if you actually look at his dismissals, I thought Bhubaneswar Kumar's dismissal to get rid of Moeen Ali was a gem, because it was a peach of a delivery. If you actually look at Thakur's dismissals, it's generally not peaches of delivery, it's just poor batsmanship. Poor thinking, poor stroke play. 1 or 2 times that you're looking at the technical side of the England players and going, not quite right. I'll state now that I think Bhubaneswar Kumar is the most skillful white ball bowler in the world. I can't think of any other that bowls at 80 odd miles an hour and has that white ball moving like he does. There's no one that I know can just get the ball to subtly move like Kumar can, whether it's the outswinger, the inswinger, the cutters. On commentary here in the UK, Dennis was on about the backspinner that he bowled to get rid of Moeen Ali. The backspinner that just allowed it to zip off the surface and seam. He's got the Yorkers. He can bowl the bouncer. Not often, but when he thinks it's going to unsettle the batter, he'll bowl the bouncer. I don't know of a more skillful bowler at that pace around the world. And when you think he's coming back from an injury, a remarkable comeback for Bhubaneswar Kumar.
And we conceded to Shardul Thakur, to Prasidh Krishna. Fine, guys, you can go for a few, but take the wickets. Bhuvi is stingy. He said, I'll take the wickets, but hey, I'm not going for more than 4. So there was a stage when the entire Indian bowling lineup, this is how it finished off, of course, after things evened out. But all the other 4 names under Bhuvi Joy were 10 plus and over, and Bhuvi was still going for under 4. So it was just, and just to add to that, you go to Virat Kohli and tell him that, listen, by the way, your 6th bowler, Hardik Pandya, he's going to be sitting out sipping a cup of coffee. Rohit's going to be sitting out, so you're not going to have your vice captain there. Let's see. Shreyas Iyer won't be on the field over there. And Johnny Bairstow's just given you a start with 90 of 60. Go for it.
No, absolutely. I think Bhubaneswar Kumar is absolutely the most. He's an amazingly skillful player, and the big thing about it is the amount of control he's had. The other interesting thing. Remember, Gautam, when we've been following Indian cricket for a couple of decades, more than that, maybe 3-4 decades, and one of the things you had was bowlers would burst into the scene as fast bowlers and soon become medium pacers. You had Munaf Patel, tear away fast bowler, suddenly turns down, he's a 125 bowler, control, line and length. Because they all decided once they're in the team, now let us, we're getting wickets with control, not with pace. Right now in India, because what's happening is exactly the reverse. They're coming in. So Bhuvi came in as a 125 to 128 bowler. I know him because he's a product of the National Cricket Academy when Dave Watmore was in charge. And he was the first guy to recommend. In fact, when we were at KKR, we spoke to him and he said that, this kid from Uttar Pradesh, have a good look at him. So he was but he's a swing bowler. He says he's not express pace. He's about 125, 100, max 130. Today, Bhuvi can bowl between 135 and 140. So instead of slowing down, Indian bowlers are actually getting faster. They're adding 5 to 10 kilometers of pace. And that's something new. So Bhuvi becomes an even more dangerous weapon. And because India's, maybe rotation policy is good enough, he's getting enough rest. He's went out due to injuries. He's had enough time to recover. The NCA has invested a hell of a lot of time in also helping him get fit. And now he's back and he's one of the best in the world, as Michael said.
And Michael, to finish off on Bhubaneswar, just purely from a point of view of someone who may not appreciate the nuances of the game, but just looks at him as a character, he wouldn't exactly intimidate you. If he rings the bell in the middle of the night and you're expecting this big strapping fast bowler, you'd be like, come in, cup of tea. So it's all about the skill.
Yeah, but give me someone bowling 90 odd miles an hour any day of the week. I'll face them with my eyes shut because I just like the pace deflection. But someone like Bhubaneswar, where you have to think so much and everything has to be spot on in your timing because you know that he's going to be probing on that front foot, moving it either way. And you know he can outskill you. You know that he can bowl the balls that necessarily you can't prepare for. When you're facing real quick bowling, it's just your instincts take over and you can just react and play. When you're facing someone like Bhubaneswar, you really, really have to think hard as a batsman. You're right. You're probably not going to have too many sleepless nights because you're not going to get hurt, but you will get hurt in the worst way because you'll be on the way back to the pavilion because he'll outskill you. I don't know him that well, but every time I've seen him and talked to him, he seems the most placid gentleman in the team. Lovely guy. And he knows how to fire up as soon as he goes over that white line. He's got that inner, not steel in terms of shouting at the opponents or running down and chirping and sledging any batter, but you just know you're in a contest. He's got a real nice body language of control. And when he's got the ball in hand, I'm sure Virat Kohli just kind of sits back and goes, I could like me on this chair when generally England can play white ball cricket. I sit back and relax. It's going a bit pear-shaped. I'm going to have to come a bit further forward, having lost a few, but I think Virat can sit back and relax when Bhubaneswar has the ball in hand. He's in full control.
Yeah, Joy, I can tell you, I was witness to it when we moved from the test matches to the first T20 international. Michael said he started like this and he said, this is how I'm going to be sitting for white ball cricket for England. But and he had a point there. Right up there, top 2 teams in the world. But today, I mean, some of India's skill levels have shown. But interesting, you talked about Bhuvi and knowing him well. Have you ever really seen him lose his shirt?
No, I've never seen him lose. I've seen him quite a lot, and I've never seen him lose it. I mean, Bhubaneswar Kumar is really worried, really, really worried when he needs to run an errand for his wife, which he's forgotten. Those are his real concerns. I've not seen him that worried ever on the cricket field, even when he's got hammered. And he says that, there are days, he says, I asked him, how is it like bowling against Chris Gayle? He says, there's a point beyond which you can't do anything. You put the ball out there and you expect it to do what it does. He will do what it needs to be done. So there's he breaks down his game very simply. He's very calm about his decision making. And the good thing about that is he's like a striker. Strikers in football don't bother about the last miss. Bhuvi's not. He's one of those guys who can shut off the last 6 or the last 4 or whatever's happened to him and think about the next ball. And that for a fast bowler, especially in T20 cricket, is a huge, huge advantage. It's a great quality.
Trying to eavesdrop on Eoin Morgan, who also exudes that same sort of calmness with that very refreshing Irish accent. He's actually said that the aggressive approach may have been overdone, and we can probably look at the innings progression, which looked all England, but the problem was the loss of wickets, and maybe a slightly controlled approach at that stage would have made things a lot better. If you have a look at that, England 8.9, 6.8. Remember, India were 4.5 in those first 10 overs. England were double of that. At one stage, Michael, I remember the difference between the two sides was 79. 79 in a run chase. And Eoin Morgan said, well, at the end of the day, I'd rather lose like this than lose by 10 runs. So I'm trying to interpret where he's coming from on that one.
This is what Eoin Morgan has done for many years. He wants his team to play aggressively. And if they get bowled out like they have done today, playing aggressively, he's openly admitted that he doesn't mind that. This is the style of cricket that he wants his team to play. I do think that you've got to be careful, particularly in India, on the wickets that the next World Cup will be played on. I don't think they are the kind of wickets that you can just blast it all the time. I think you've got to have a little bit more nous. When you think that England had 130 for no wickets after 13 overs, so you've got 37 overs to get 190. In this modern game at 5 and over with 10 wickets in hand, that is a stroll in the park. And his team are an exceptional cricket team. They've been magnificent for many years, but they've just got to make sure that they keep getting better and better. And it can't be just that that's the way we play, and every time we play on any kind of wicket, we just play one way. To win the World Cup in India in 2 years' time, it'll take more than just crash, bang, wallop. It'll take a little bit more skill, and they've got to learn from that experience today. They have to be honest with themselves to say that middle order, there was too many soft wickets, too many easy dismissals in the middle order where they could have just played a little bit. Look, you have to play aggressively. It's a new era, but there are times when you can say, well, actually, the opening partnership got us off to such a flying start. They took all the risks. We don't have to take as many now, because for over 50 overs, if you're taking huge risks every single over, you will come unstuck against quality bowling, i.e. Bhubaneswar Kumar and co. They will have you because they're good bowlers. So now and again, you've got to go, well, all right, we've taken that chunk of 12 overs so well, and we've taken so many risks and it's worked. We can now sit in and have a cigar and just play. You don't need to be downing drinks all the time. It becomes a little bit messy if you do that. Just play a little bit more sensibly and have a cup of tea.
Yeah, fair enough. Or if I go back to my analogy of the racing car, they were going so fast that the engine started overheating. So you need to allow it to cool down a little bit and just cruise along the highway if that's possible. And the phrase Michael used, crash, bang, wallop, has been interpreted by dictate terms by Eoin Morgan Joy. He said, we have dictated terms and we'd like to continue to do so, but they have to obviously temper that slightly.
Hey, that BZ, I think here is, they're missing somebody who could do that very well for them, who would probably be a crucial part of the World Cup plans. Joe Root. Joe Root's the kind of guy who could have walked into a situation like this and say, I don't need to take any unnecessary risks. He's the kind of guy who's smart enough to adjust to the situation. I think he's one of the cricketers who doesn't play in one mode alone. And you're right. This England team, it was from 2015 onwards when once Morgan became captain, the coach also came, Trevor Bayliss came, and they said, we are going to play for this World Cup in 2019. So remember that whole ethos was built for the 2019 World Cup. It's been really successful for them. It's worked for them. It's won them a World Cup where they wanted to win. They've taken them to a World T20 final. I think for 2021, now you need to evolve to the next level, as Michael's talking about, saying, okay, we can play at this mode, but we also, these pitches may allow us to dial down a bit if we get the starts we want. And I think their Joe Root and batsmen like Joe Root become very crucial because they play the situation. They don't just play their game; they play the situation.
Yeah, fair enough. I think he continues to use phrases like that. He even said push the envelope towards the end, did Owen Morgan. But switching to Virat Kohli, not often does he gush even at the end of a victory, but he said this is one of the sweetest we've had in recent times. And you'd have to say that because first with the bat, just over 200 at the end of 40 overs, getting to 317. And then with the ball, when they were completely out of it, players showing character. So I think on two fronts, Team India will be happy, and that's the reason for Virat Kohli using that phrase, Michael.
Yeah, I mean, if you had to look at both batting displays, India would want England's start and England want India's finish. It would have been the perfect combination. They probably got 400 if you kind of mix them both together. Virat would be delighted because his team were challenged. With the bat first and foremost, it looked like they were only going to get 260, 270 until Krunal Pandya played a gem of an innings. And then with the ball in hand, his team were challenged. England come out and play like they did with that opening partnership. As a captain, you think it's gone. When a team are so far ahead. I mean, in terms of the Duckworth-Lewis, as you mentioned, 79 in front, England should have strolled it, should have played sensible cricket and given India no chance. But, Virat will be delighted that younger players are coming into the side and feeling that pressure early and exposing themselves to pressure and delivering. It's all right to expose young players to pressure and you want them to get that experience and it doesn't quite come out right for the first 2 or 3 occasions. But so many of these young Indian players are being exposed to this pressure at the first hurdle and they're flying. They're not just creeping over it, they're flying over the hurdle, which will, I think as captains sometimes, not many captains speak out about the culture of the dressing room and how proud you feel as a captain when a young player goes and expresses himself straight away. So Virat can take a lot of credit that he is doing something right. And Ravi Shastri, they are doing something right to allow these players to go out and play the style of cricket that they're playing for their franchises or their state teams, because that takes a culture and a mindset in the dressing room to allow them to do that. So he deserves a lot of credit for that.
And that expression, Joy, that Michael just mentioned has been termed as intent by Virat Kohli. He said, we promote players who show intent. So it's not a coincidence if you pick X and Y. Yes, they can go 3-0, 37-0 as Prasidh Krishna did. But if Virat knows at the back of his mind that this guy has intent, he can say, here's a 4th over, mate. Pick me up a wicket. He did that. He also didn't forget in all this carnage, we can all celebrate Krunal Pandya and KL Rahul and Prasidh Krishna and Shardul Thakur. Hey, Shikhar Dhawan, he did a lot. Let's not forget him. Virat Kohli had a special mention for his innings today and for his support from the bench during the T20 internationals.
Yeah, the only problem that Virat Kohli has now, going back to the dressing room, is he's got to tear up the speech he prepared. Because, you know the script. India has to lose the first game badly, and then they've got to come back and win. And then suddenly India turns out and wins the first match. Because that formula has suited them through the Australian series, through the T20 matches. And suddenly they've won this first match. So it'll be very interesting. But jokes aside, I mean, you look at this team. Every guy that you're putting out on debut has given you something back immediately. Ishan Kishan is giving you back immediately. Surya Yadav has delivered for you immediately. Today, Krunal Pandya delivered to you in a situation where they were 202 for 5. It was not a great situation. Prasidh Krishna comes back and delivers. So both have delivered under fairly demanding situations. So 4 debutants, all of them who've given you scratch. I mean, that's fantastic. That's a strike rate that not just the Indian dressing room, the selectors should be proud of.
And of course, on the other end of the spectrum is the veteran, if you could call a 35 plus a veteran at the moment, Shikhar Dhawan, Michael. He has been adjudged player of the match, and I think something he'd be delighted by, because you tend to forget certain contributions when the match is at all the roller coasters as it has.
Yeah, and when you see a player like Shikhar Dhawan who, he'll know in his own mind he needs runs. There's so many good young players that are not just knocking down the Indian door, beating down the door to be in the side. Shikhar knows at his age, he has to score runs and he has to score a lot of them. So to start the series like he has and play with so much style, prowess, play with great skill, it wouldn't surprise me in the next 2 games he goes on to get a big 100. When you're playing in that fashion, I think England will make changes. I think England will rotate again. This is a series that I think they're going to try and find out about 1 or 2 players. So it wouldn't surprise me if we saw a Reece Topley, a Matt Parkinson, the leg spinner. So England maybe will be diluted down for the next couple of games, which will give Shikhar Dhawan an even better opportunity potentially to go on and get that big score. He played great. And I think Virat Kohli also, I mean, we haven't even mentioned Virat's batting. He got a 50-yard, played again with his eyes shut. He looked like he could have just kind of got 150 and then that one little blip off Mark Wood, but played gloriously. And when Virat's back in form and you've got Shikhar Dhawan playing like he has, India in the next 2 games will get a big score. I have no doubt about that because it will come together. They won't have that little period in the middle like we saw today. They'll get it right. I do fear for England in the next 2 games. I think it could get quite tough for them because this was their moment today. They played all right, should have won the game, and they've really lost quite heavily in a game that they should have won with the chase, and that'll hurt them quite hard.
I must confess, Joy, I had actually forgotten Virat's contribution. All the build-up to Shikhar Dhawan and all the wickets that were taken and the flamboyance of that partnership, the 112 and 61 deliveries. But yeah, Virat Kohli did get a half-century, played beautifully, as Michael said, looked set for a lot more. And he also did say that, I'm sure when he was batting himself, they were looking at 340, even 350. So which means that that's the kind of mindset they're going to come out with next time around, no matter what happens with the toss.
Yeah, I think they're very confident, and I think you're also going to see a couple of changes given the fact that Rohit, given that injury, there's no real earthly reason for Rohit to play the next 2 matches in discomfort. Shreyas definitely looks out, so there's going to be a little more blood, and Surya would wonder that okay, finally my chances come. I never get a chance, even if I'm picked, I never get a chance in the first match. So that's going to happen anyway. So he'll get his chance at some point in time, and I think that's not going to hurt India at all. But I'd be interested in seeing a bit of Reece Topley as well, because he's got a bit of a reputation. Let's see, and England needs to try out all these players to see what they're going to do before the World Cup comes around.
Well, hold those thoughts, gentlemen, because we do want to look ahead to the next game. It's been so hectic. It's been long. Could have been even longer, but thanks to the Indian bowling, a few overs were shaved off, and importantly, some time was shaved off. So the venue stays the same. It's going to be on that highway between Mumbai and Pune, just about approaching the city of Pune in 3 days' time. On Friday, the second one-day international, the second of 3, with India in the unfamiliar position of being 1-0 up in the series. So that's something they'll have to mentally deal with, the whole thing of being ahead in the series. And let's start with Team India. We know there's going to be one absolutely definite change. Shreyas Iyer will be playing no part in the next game or the rest of the series. Rohit Sharma will also be doubtful. There's no real need for him to play with the kind of depth that there is in that lineup. So, Joy, those 2 really like-for-like replacements coming.
Yeah, you have like-for-like replacements. Surya walks in definitely, and you have Shubman is, of course, is there. So Surya and Shubman walk in seriously. I think Kuldeep, they're a bit. Kuldeep hasn't had a great outing. He's probably the only one who hasn't had, with the bat or ball, a great outing today at all. I think they'll give Kuldeep a run because I think they need to build his confidence. They understand that he's a unique bowler, the kind of action he has. He brings something very different. But so I don't see the bowling change for the next match at least, because they'll give Prasidh another chance as well. But the only other change I can think of is Kunal's done well. So Washington Sundar doesn't get a chance. They would probably send Sundar home as well. If Washington Sundar doesn't play the next match, he should be going home as well. There's no point keeping him. We've talked about 6 days out of a 214-day bubble. Let the guy have at least 3 days with family. I mean, those are things which are huge considerations. And, I'm thinking about it, that it's such a strange 2020 now, after 2020, that we think about giving people time off with the family. I mean, 5 years back or even a year and a half back, you wouldn't think of it in the same way as we think about today. But the word bio bubble becoming an essential part of cricket punditry is something that none of us could have imagined.
Michael, just to finish off on that, some obviously obvious changes, but would you stick with Kuldeep for another game?
Yeah, absolutely. He didn't have a great outing, but how can you expect him to have a great outing when he's not been playing? I think he needs to play all 3 games. He's a part of a winning team. He should take confidence from that he's been a part of India's win today. I don't see why you'd want to change Kuldeep Yadav when he's just played 1 game. Play him in the next 2. Try and give him a bit of confidence. England look like they had a good method against him. They're going to go at him, particularly when he first comes on. They're going to put him under a lot of pressure. They'll probably hand back and try and do what Bairstow did to him. So he's just got to try and get better and better. I mean, they keep talking about his paces, not bowling quite quick enough. He's just got to be him. He's just got to be whatever he believes in himself at, go and deliver, because I'm sure he's listening to so many people. You got to bowl it quicker. You got to do that. You got to do. Well, he had a lot of success a couple of years ago, and he's got to remind himself that he has been a good bowler and he can get back to that form. And he's got to do what works for him. He shouldn't need to listen to too many, maybe one or two people that are close to him, but he has to tell himself that he's a good bowler. He's got a few tricks, and it was a difficult night tonight. But if he plays the next two games, I think he'll get better and better.
Yep, often that's something we've said about Kuldeep. It's not necessarily about what comes from here, but what comes from here. And I'm sure he'll be all right very soon. But from England's point of view, maybe a few reasons to make a couple of changes. The intent is not going to change. Maybe they'll dial it back a couple of notches. But we haven't seen enough of Reece Stockley, Michael. Parkinson, yes, we have. Liam Livingstone, another one who obviously, because of the leagues that he's traveling in, has been exposed. So do you expect all three possibly?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, Reece Stockley, I think, will come in for Mark Wood. I think the rest Mark Wood. Parkinson, does he come in for Tom Curran potentially? I can't see that, Adil Rashid will miss out. Do they need two leg spinners? So Matt Parkinson might have to wait for another game, and Rashid will miss the last game. Livingstone, I think he'll probably play if Morgan or Sam Billings isn't quite right. We saw them both pick up a niggle. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But England will make changes. I've no idea, to be honest, how they're going to go, because they've surprised me all winter with their selection. So I've no idea what they'll do, but they'll certainly make changes for the second game.
Yeah, this is one of those times when it's okay to have a rotation policy. Sam Billings might be a forced change, depending on how that shoulder goes. For Owen Morgan, it's just about looking after that webbing. He has had stitches on it, but as Michael said earlier, he is more of a bottom-handed player, so he may not use it as much, but maybe he'd like to give it a rest for one day. So enough players to look forward to for the next game. But talking of asking questions, India's bowlers ask plenty in terms of Prasidh Krishna and Shardul Thakur, but when it comes to the real tough questions to be asked, the man of the hour, Joy Bhattacharjya.
Yeah, I quite like this question. It was fairly open-ended, and I am hoping that we've got some correct answers. Which one-day international team record was first achieved more than 40 years after the first ODI was played, and then astonishingly achieved again the same year with the same team, and it's not been achieved since? And the achievement is 3 one-day international centuries in the same innings. South Africa first versus West Indies and then versus India. And the guy who was there for both of those, of course, is unsurprisingly A.B. de Villiers, a genius. But I mean, to have 3 guys score centuries in a one-day innings is quite special. And I'm amazed that it's happened twice in the same year and by the same team.
Yeah, interesting. Today we saw the absolute opposite side of it. We had biggish totals. We had situations where we could have had one, maybe more than one, getting to 100. But both the potential centurions in Shikhar Dhawan and Johnny Bairstow fell short of that. So the question is actually very much different from what happened today in Pune. What about our winner? We do have a winner for this particular question. And it's something you had to keep your eye on it. And it's Manish, Hitman 55. So wonder where the 55 comes from. He's got a nice mix between Ben Stokes' number and Rohit Sharma's nickname. So well done to Manish for picking that up. Always good to have newer inputs from that hashtag Ask Cricbuzz Live or hashtag Cricbuzz Live to answer the questions. We also want those questions to come in, by the way. Hashtag Ask Cricbuzz Live. Keep them coming. We'll feature your questions on the show when we come back in 3 days' time for the next one-day international. Thank you very much, Michael Vaughan. Lots to look forward to from Team England's point of view. Thank you, Joy, for all your thoughts and the question. And thank you all for joining in. We've had an earlier finish than expected. What a win for India. In the words of Virat Kohli, it's been one of the sweetest in recent times. We'll see you soon.